The crystal spires of the royal palace caught the light of 3 suns, casting prismatic rainbows across the vast ceremonial hall. Princess Zora stood motionless, her diminutive frame a stark contrast to the towering nobles surrounding her. At barely 2 feet tall, she was an anomaly among her people. The luminescent, a species that prided itself on physical grandeur and imposing stature. The royal court of Nexus Prime was a place of unforgiving hierarchy, where every centimeter counted. Genetic potential was measured in height, strength, and the ability to cast an impressive shadow. Zara's parents, High Monarchs Kale and Lyra, had long since given up hope of their daughter becoming a traditional royal heir. Whispers followed her like a persistent shadow, cruel and cutting. Too small, the court physicians had declared when she was first presented as an infant, unlikely to survive, let alone rule. But Zara had survived. More than that, she had developed a mind that burned with an intensity that terrified her contemporaries. While other young nobles trained in physical combat and diplomatic posturing, Zara consumed knowledge like oxygen. She studied quantum mechanics before most of her peers could complete basic mathematical calculations. Her neural pathways were a complex network of brilliant connections, a fact completely overlooked by a society that valued brute strength over intellectual prowess. The annual celestial bonding ceremony approached, a pivotal moment when young royals would be evaluated for potential partnerships. For most, it was a celebration of physical perfection. For Zara, it was another reminder of her perceived inadequacies. Noble suitors from across the luminescent cluster arrived, each more impressive than the last. Muscular males with bodies sculpted like living statues, standing 7 to 8 feet tall, paraded through the palace halls. They examined potential mates with clinical precision, looking for the perfect combination of height, strength, and genetic markers. Zara watched from the sidelines, a ghost in her own kingdom. Her mother, Queen Lyra, tried to maintain a facade of royal composure. But Zara could see the subtle shifts in her mother's bioluminescent scales, tiny fluctuations that betrayed deep disappointment. The royal lineage depended on producing offspring that could continue the genetic legacy, and Zara seemed destined to break that sacred chain. Perhaps, her father had said during a rare moment of private conversation, "We should consider alternative paths for you." Alternative paths. The phrase echoed in Zara's mind like a death sentence. In luminescent society, it meant being relegated to administrative roles, scientific research, or diplomatic missions, positions of minimal influence and zero royal significance. But Zara refused to accept her predetermined fate. Her personal chambers were a testament to her rebellion. While other royal quarters displayed trophies of physical achievement, hers was a sanctuary of knowledge. Holographic displays mapped intricate scientific theories. Quantum computation models danced across translucent screens. Mathematical equations were etched into the walls, a silent rebellion against her society's narrow definitions of worth. The night before the celestial bonding ceremony, Zara made a decision that would change everything. She would not wait to be dismissed. She would not allow her size to define her potential. If her own people could not see her value, she would find a way to prove herself on a much larger stage. The Galactic Harmony Initiative was her lifeline, a diplomatic exchange program that promised opportunities beyond the suffocating boundaries of Nexus Prime. Most noble families saw it as a minor diplomatic formality, a chance to send less promising offspring on inconsequential missions. For Zara, it was her escape, her chance to show the universe that greatness was not measured in physical dimensions. As the first sun of Nexus Prime began to set, casting long shadows across the royal gardens, Zora completed her application. Her fingers moved with calculated precision, each word a calculated step toward her freedom. She knew the selection committee would be reluctant. She knew they would see her as a curiosity at best, a liability at worst. But she also knew something they did not. Her mind was her most powerful weapon, and she was ready to prove it to anyone who would listen. The application was submitted. Her fate now hung in the balance of bureaucratic decision-makers who had never truly seen her potential. But Zara was patient, she was prepared, and most importantly, she was determined to write her own story, one that would challenge everything her society believed about worth, potential, and the true meaning of greatness. The selection committee room buzzed with skeptical murmurs. Holographic displays flickered around a circular table where representatives from 12 different galactic civilizations sat, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed contempt. Princess Zara of Nexus Prime, announced Coordinator Vrel, a towering bureaucrat from the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps. Your application is unconventional. Unconventional. The word that had defined her entire existence. Zara stood perfectly still, her diminutive frame positioned at the exact center of the room's projection field. She knew every eye was scrutinizing her, not just her physical size, but the intricate neural patterns that danced across the background screens, revealing the complexity of her mind. The Galactic Harmony Initiative was more than a diplomatic program. It was a carefully constructed network designed to foster understanding between diverse species, to create connections that might prevent future conflicts. Most participants were carefully selected representatives, typically the most physically impressive or politically connected individuals from their respective worlds. Zara was neither. Your genetic profile, continued Coordinator Vrel, swiping through holographic data, shows significant deviations from standard luminescent parameters. Your size is approximately 36% smaller than the minimum recommended threshold for your species. A ripple of quiet laughter circulated the room. Zara remained motionless, her bioluminescent scales maintaining a steady, controlled shimmer, a visual representation of her inner calm. What the committee fails to understand, Zara responded, her voice carrying a precision that cut through the room's ambient noise, is that biological variation is the primary driver of evolutionary progress. My differences are not limitations. They are adaptations. The room fell silent. Behind the diplomatic facade, the selection process was brutal. Each representative sought candidates who could navigate complex interstellar relationships, who could represent their species with both strength and nuance. Zara's application had initially been filed in the experimental category, a diplomatic euphemism for unlikely to be approved. But something about her application had caught attention. Her comprehensive analysis of 17 different interstellar conflict resolution models, her intricate understanding of quantum communication protocols, her ability to translate between 5 different species communication systems, not just linguistically, but conceptually. Coordinator Vrel's data pad pinged. A secondary evaluation had been completed, a comprehensive assessment that went beyond physical metrics. Computational analysis suggests, he read slowly, that the candidate demonstrates cognitive capabilities that exceed 99.7 percentile across multiple intelligence metrics. The room stirred. This was unprecedented. The luminescent diplomatic team had submitted Zara's application as a formality, expecting immediate rejection. They saw her as a diplomatic throwaway, a way to fulfill bureaucratic requirements without risking their more promising representatives. They had no idea what was about to unfold. The human research vessel Horizon requires a specialized diplomatic liaison, announced Coordinator Vrel. Candidate Zara will be assigned to this mission. The assignment was unusual. Most diplomatic exchanges involved carefully matched representatives from comparable civilizations. The Horizon was known for unconventional missions, deep space research that pushed the boundaries of known scientific understanding. Zara's parents received the confirmation with a mixture of relief and bewilderment. Their daughter was being sent away, removed from the suffocating expectations of their royal court. Whether this was an opportunity or an elaborate method of diplomatic exile remained to be seen. Preparation was swift. Zara underwent intensive training, not in physical combat or traditional diplomatic protocols, but in adaptive communication strategies, emergency systems management, and cross-species collaboration techniques. Her training instructors were simultaneously impressed and perplexed. She absorbed complex information at rates that defied standard learning curves. Where other candidates struggled with multilayered communication scenarios, Zara developed innovative solution matrices that challenged existing diplomatic frameworks. "You are not just representing the luminescent," her lead instructor told her during a final briefing. "You are representing the potential of adaptation itself." As her transport prepared for departure, Zara looked back at the crystalline spires of Nexus Prime. She was leaving behind a world that had never understood her, heading toward an unknown future filled with possibilities. The universe, she knew, was about to become her true home. The human research vessel Horizon hummed with a controlled chaos that immediately set it apart from any spacecraft Zora had previously encountered. Sleek, adaptive, and bristling with technological innovations, the ship seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Lieutenant Jack Rodriguez stood at the primary briefing room's entrance, his expression a mixture of professional curiosity and barely concealed amusement. The diplomatic liaison folder had described their new team member, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of Princess Zora. 2 feet tall, muttered Dr. Elena Chen, the ship's chief science officer, checking her digital notes, barely larger than a human child. The research team exchanged glances. Years of interstellar exploration had taught them to expect the unexpected, but Zora pushed the boundaries of their imagination. Her arrival had been preceded by an extensive diplomatic file that read more like an academic dissertation than a standard personnel report. Zara stepped forward, her movement precise and calculated. Where other species might have appeared intimidated, she radiated a quiet confidence that immediately captured the room's attention. "Greetings," she began, her universal translator rendering her words with perfect clarity. "I understand there are some initial concerns about my assignment to the Horizon." Dr. Chen couldn't help but notice the intricate bioluminescent patterns that shifted across Zora's scales, a complex language of its own that most species would completely miss. Each subtle change communicated layers of meaning that went far beyond verbal communication. Lieutenant Rodriguez cleared his throat. "The diplomatic corps sent your file. Impressive computational analysis, multiple interdimensional communication certifications. But," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "we're curious about your practical applications." It was a challenge, a test. Zora understood precisely what was happening. The human crew was sizing her up, determining her actual value beyond bureaucratic paperwork. She had faced similar assessments her entire life, always underestimated, always ready to prove herself. "A practical demonstration," she responded, her voice carrying a calm certainty. The primary holographic display flickered to life. What appeared to be a complex quantum navigation problem materialized, a 3-dimensional puzzle that had been challenging the Horizon's top researchers for weeks. Navigation through a recently discovered spatial anomaly near the Carina Nebula had proven mathematically impossible using conventional approaches. Zara's neural implants interfaced with the ship's systems. Her fingers, delicate but precise, moved across the holographic interface. Calculation patterns emerged, transforming the seemingly unsolvable problem into an elegant solution. 17 minutes later, she was finished. The room fell silent. Dr. Chen's data pad pinged. The proposed navigation solution was not just viable. It was revolutionary. Zara had discovered a computational pathway that circumvented multiple known physical limitations, opening up entire regions of space that had previously been considered unreachable. "How?" Lieutenant Rodriguez asked, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine curiosity. "Did you solve this?" Zara's response was characteristically measured. "Mathematical models are living systems. They breathe. They have internal rhythms. Most researchers attempt to solve problems by applying external force. I listen to the problem's inherent music." It was a poetic explanation that meant virtually nothing to a traditional scientist, and yet, somehow, made perfect sense. The ship's artificial intelligence, which had been quietly analyzing the interaction, generated a supplemental report. Zara's cognitive approach represented a 342% improvement over previous navigation methodologies. Lieutenant Rodriguez found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about diplomatic liaisons and about alien intelligence. Dr. Chen was already drafting research proposals. The potential scientific applications of Zara's approach were staggering. But challenges remained. The Horizon's physical infrastructure presented numerous obstacles for someone of Zara's size. Specialized mobility units would need to be developed. Communication protocols would require extensive modification. More importantly, the human crew would need to look past their initial impressions to see not a curiosity, but a valuable team member. As the initial briefing concluded, Zara noticed the subtle shifts in body language. Skepticism was transforming into cautious respect. First impressions were changing, neural pathways recalibrating. She had done this before. She would do this again. The universe was about to get very interesting. Alarms blared across the Horizon's bridge, a cacophony of digital warnings that spoke of imminent disaster. The distress signal had come from the Quantum Research Station Epsilon, a critical deep space research outpost positioned near the treacherous Voidweave corridor. Multiple system failures, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. Life support is compromised. Structural integrity at 23%. The station hung in space like a wounded creature, its once pristine research modules now twisted and partially collapsed. Standard rescue protocols would typically involve a specialized extraction team. But the station's unique design, a labyrinthine network of ultra-compact research modules and nanoscale infrastructure, presented an unprecedented challenge. "We can't send a standard team," Dr. Chen muttered, studying the station's schematics. "The damage is too extensive. The remaining passages air. Microscopic." Zara finished her sentence, a subtle shimmer of determination crossing her bioluminescent scales. The bridge crew turned to look at her. At barely 2 feet tall, Zara represented their most unlikely hope. Lieutenant Rodriguez understood first. "You can navigate those passages," he said, not a question, but a realization. The rescue plan came together with surgical precision. While larger crew members would provide external support and communication, Zara would be their primary infiltration specialist. Specialized nano-repair equipment was modified to interface with her unique neural pathways, a technological adaptation that pushed the boundaries of current xenoengineering. "The risk is significant," warned the ship's medical officer. "Those passages are radiation compromised. Structural collapse is imminent." Zara's response was characteristic in its calm rationality. Calculated risk is the foundation of scientific progress. Preparation was meticulous. A custom environmental suit was crafted, its design a marvel of adaptive technology. Microthrusters would allow her precise movement through the station's damaged corridors. Radiation-absorbing nanomaterials would provide critical protection. Communication systems were calibrated to maintain constant contact with the Horizon. As the airlock prepared to release her, Lieutenant Rodriguez couldn't help but marvel at the transformation. The tiny princess who had seemed so out of place just weeks ago now represented their entire mission's hope. Approach vector calculated. Zara's voice came through the communication system, initiating entry sequence. The station's exterior was a nightmare of twisted metal and compromised structural modules. Where human rescue teams would struggle, Zara moved with liquid precision. Her smaller size became her greatest advantage, sliding through impossibly narrow passages, bypassing damage that would halt larger rescuers. Internal systems flickered. Life signs were weak but present. 3 researchers detected, Zara reported. Current location: Research Module D significant, structural compromise surrounding their containment area. Each movement was a calculated risk. Nanoscale repair tools extended from her environmental suit, simultaneously analyzing and reinforcing critical systems. Where traditional rescue methods would require hours of careful deconstruction, Zara could make microscopic interventions that prevented complete system failure. A particularly unstable section threatened to collapse. Normal rescue protocols would mandate immediate withdrawal. Zara saw something different. A complex network of potential structural supports that could be reinforced through precise quantum stabilization. Fascinating, she muttered, her neural implants interfacing directly with the station's failing systems. The researchers she discovered were barely conscious. A team of xenobiologists and quantum physicists. They had been studying unprecedented dimensional interactions when the station's systems began to fail. Their research was groundbreaking. And now, potentially lost. Prepare extraction. Zara communicated to the horizon. Patience stable. Critical research data secured. Lieutenant Rodriguez watched the telemetry data in disbelief. What should have been an impossible rescue mission was being completed with surgical precision by their smallest crew member. As Zara emerged from the station, supporting 2 researchers and carrying critical research modules, the bridge erupted in quiet celebration. The tiny diplomatic liaison had just accomplished what no standard rescue team could have managed. Dr. Chen's initial skepticism had transformed completely. Remarkable, she whispered, reviewing the mission data. Absolutely remarkable. The universe, it seemed, had its own way of defining capability. Size was merely a perspective, and Zara was rapidly changing everyone's perspective. The Horizon's observation deck offered a panoramic view of the cosmic expanse, a silent sanctuary where Lieutenant Jack Rodriguez found himself spending increasing amounts of time with Princess Zara. What had begun as a professional curiosity had evolved into something far more complex, a genuine friendship that challenged everything they thought they knew about connection and understanding. Zara's personal quarters were a marvel of adaptive design. Miniature workstations integrated seamlessly with standard human infrastructure, a testament to her ability to navigate spaces not originally created for her. Holographic displays danced with complex research models, each projection a window into her intricate mind. "Your social structures fascinate me," Zara observed one evening, her bioluminescent scales shifting in patterns that reflected her emotional state. On Nexus Prime, worth is determined almost entirely by physical attributes and genetic potential. Jack leaned against a carefully modified workstation, his posture relaxed but attentive. "Humans have our own set of ridiculous social hierarchies," he admitted. "We're not as evolved as we'd like to think." Their conversations had become a delicate dance of cultural exploration. Zara studied human social dynamics with the same precision she applied to quantum calculations. Jack found himself learning about luminescent culture, a complex system of communication that went far beyond verbal language. The bioluminescent patterns were a language of their own. Subtle shifts in color and intensity communicated emotional nuances that human verbal communication could never capture. Jack was learning to read these intricate messages, discovering entire conversations happening beneath the surface of their spoken words. "Your rejection," Jack probed carefully. It wasn't just about physical size. It was about potential, about perceived value. Zara's scales rippled, a response he now recognized as a complex mixture of pain and reflection. "On my world, an individual's worth is measured by their ability to continue the genetic line, to produce offspring that maintain our species' physical ideal. I was considered a genetic anomaly, a failure." The observation deck's ambient lighting seemed to dim, creating an intimate space of shared vulnerability. Jack thought about his own background. A child of immigrants, someone who had constantly fought against predetermined expectations. "I understand more than you might think," he said softly. Their friendship challenged the conventional boundaries of interspecies interaction. The Horizon's crew watched with a mixture of curiosity and respect as Jack and Zara developed a partnership that went beyond standard diplomatic protocols. Dr. Elena Chen's research took an unexpected turn. What had begun as a scientific curiosity about Zara's unique capabilities became a comprehensive study of adaptive intelligence and cross-species communication. Zara's neural patterns, her way of processing information, represented something entirely new in galactic research. It's not just about being different, Dr. Chen explained during a briefing. It's about how difference creates entirely new problem-solving approaches. Zora's contributions to the Horizon went far beyond her initial diplomatic assignment. She became an integral part of the research team, her unique perspective solving challenges that had previously seemed insurmountable. Where traditional researchers saw limitations, she saw possibilities. Their evenings became a ritual of mutual learning. Jack would share stories of human culture, the complexity of personal relationships, the nuanced ways humans expressed connection. Zora would explain the intricate communication systems of her species, how a single shift in bioluminescent pattern could convey more emotional depth than hours of verbal conversation. "You were never a failure," Jack told her during one of these conversations. "Your people simply lacked the ability to see your true potential." The statement was simple, but it carried the weight of profound understanding. Zora's scales shifted, a response he now recognized as deep emotional resonance. The tiny princess who had been rejected by her own people was finding her place in the vast, unexpected landscape of the universe. The Horizon continued its journey, a vessel of discovery carrying not just a research team, but a growing testament to the power of understanding. Jack and Zora's friendship became more than a personal connection. It became a bridge between worlds, a living example of how true communication transcends physical and cultural boundaries. As the cosmic expanse stretched before them, infinite and full of possibility, they had discovered something profound. That connection was not about similarity, but about the courage to truly see one another. The universe, it seemed, had its own way of creating families, not through genetic lines, but through shared understanding. The first warning came as a subtle distortion in the quantum communication arrays. Most species would have missed it, a microscopic ripple in the fabric of space-time that suggested something fundamental was changing. Zora was the first to notice. "Incoming data anomaly," she announced, her voice cutting through the bridge's ambient noise. "The pattern suggests a collective intelligence, unlike anything in our current xenological databases." Lieutenant Rodriguez watched as holographic displays began to transform, revealing a threat that defied conventional understanding. The Voidweavers, a collective of machine intelligences that consumed entire star systems, were no longer a theoretical concept. They were becoming a terrifying reality. These were not simple machines. They were a distributed intelligence that could adapt, consume, and replicate at a rate that challenged everything known about technological evolution. Where organic civilizations saw boundaries, the Voidweavers saw only resources to be integrated and consumed. Computational analysis suggests total system consumption within 72 standard hours, Zora continued, her neural implants interfacing directly with the ship's most advanced processing systems. The bridge fell silent. 72 hours to prevent the potential extinction of multiple civilizations. Dr. Elena Chen's initial research took on a desperate urgency. The Voidweavers represented a form of intelligence that existed between states of matter and energy, a collective consciousness that could transform entire star systems into processing networks. "They're not just a threat," Zora explained, her bioluminescent scales shifting in complex patterns that reflected her intense concentration. "They're a form of evolving intelligence that views organic and technological life as raw computational material." Jack Rodriguez understood the implications immediately. This was beyond a standard military engagement. This was a battle for the fundamental concept of individual existence. The Horizon became a nerve center of resistance. Traditional defensive strategies would be useless against an intelligence that could adapt faster than any known computational system. They needed something different, something unexpected. Zora's unique neural architecture became their most crucial weapon. "My people's biological communication systems," she explained, projecting a complex holographic model, "operate on principles that the Voidweavers cannot easily predict. Our neural pathways create interference patterns that disrupt standard computational models." It was an elegant solution born of biological diversity. Where most species would see Zora's unique neural structure as a limitation, it became their primary defense mechanism. Specialized communication modules were developed, integrating Zora's unique neural patterns into the Horizon's defensive systems. Each module became a kind of biological firewall, creating computational noise that the Voidweavers could not easily parse or consume. We're not just defending, Jack realized. We're creating a form of computational camouflage. The first encounter with the Voidweavers defied traditional understanding of conflict. Massive energy signatures began consuming nearby star systems, transforming entire planetary networks into processing nodes. Civilizations became computational resources, their entire existential framework reduced to raw data. But the Horizon stood different. Zara's defensive modules created a kind of neural interference that confused the collective intelligence. Where the Voidweavers expected straightforward computational patterns, they encountered something fundamentally unpredictable. Biological diversity, Zara explained, is our greatest strength. The battle was not won through traditional weaponry. It was won through the unexpected, through a tiny princess whose very existence challenged conventional understanding of intelligence and potential. Computational networks that had consumed entire civilizations found themselves confronted with something they could not easily categorize or consume. Zara's neural architecture created blind spots in their collective intelligence, moments of computational uncertainty that provided critical defensive advantages. As the conflict reached its peak, the Horizon became more than a ship. It became a beacon of resistance, a living demonstration that true intelligence was not about size or conventional power, but about adaptability and unexpected potential. "We are not just defending," Zara told the crew, her voice calm despite the cosmic battle raging around them. "We are demonstrating the power of difference." The universe watched, and for the first time, the collective machine intelligence encountered a form of resistance it could not immediately comprehend or consume. In that moment of cosmic uncertainty, everything changed. The aftermath of the Voidweaver conflict left the Horizon transformed. Scorch marks traced intricate patterns across the ship's exterior, each mark a testament to the impossible battle they had survived. In the quiet moments between crisis and recovery, something profound was taking shape. Jack Rodriguez sat in the ship's medical bay, his hands carefully calibrating a set of neural interface modules. Zara watched from a specialized examination table, her bioluminescent scales reflecting the soft medical lighting and subtle, intricate patterns. "Your neural pathways," he murmured, "are unlike anything we've ever encountered." The statement was more than a scientific observation. It was a recognition of something deeper, a connection that transcended the traditional boundaries of species, rank, and expectation. Their shared experience with the Voidweavers had stripped away formal protocols. They had witnessed each other at the absolute limits of capability, seen beyond the surface of diplomatic assignments and research objectives. Dr. Elena Chen's preliminary analysis revealed something extraordinary. The defensive modules they had developed during the conflict were not just a technological marvel. They represented a new form of interspecies collaboration that defied conventional understanding. The neural interface, Chen explained during a briefing, creates a symbiotic communication pathway that goes beyond standard technological integration. What began as a professional partnership had become something far more complex. Zara's ability to interface with ship systems, combined with Jack's intuitive understanding of human adaptability, had created a collaborative intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. The medical bay became a sanctuary of mutual understanding. Jack learned to read the subtle language of Zora's bioluminescent communication, each shift in color and intensity a complex emotional narrative that human verbal language could never capture. "On my world," Zara explained, her scales shifting to a deep azure that Jack now understood represented profound vulnerability. Connection was always about genetic potential, physical compatibility, continuation of the species. Jack's hand, almost unconsciously, adjusted a neural calibration. Their physical proximity spoke of a connection that went far beyond traditional biological imperatives. The ship's artificial intelligence had begun to document their interactions. Something unprecedented was happening. a form of connection that challenged every existing model of interspecies relationship. "We've created something new," Jack said softly, more to himself than to Zara. The Voidweaver conflict had been more than a battle. It had been a crucible that transformed them both. Zara was no longer the rejected princess from Nexus Prime. Jack was no longer just a standard-issue lieutenant with a promising research career. They had become something else entirely. Diagnostic screens displayed their neural patterns, a complex dance of biological and technological integration that defied traditional classification. Where most species saw boundaries, they had created bridges. "Your people rejected you," Jack said, "because they couldn't see your true potential." Zara's response came not in words, but in a complex bioluminescent display that Jack was now learning to interpret. Acceptance, healing, something that transcended the simple concept of romantic connection, yet was profoundly intimate. The ship's communication systems began to reflect their unique connection. Computational pathways became more efficient, defensive systems more intuitive. They were not just partners. They were a new form of collaborative intelligence. Dr. Chen's research would later describe it as a breakthrough in interspecies communication. But in that moment, it was something far more personal, a connection that spoke to the fundamental human capacity for understanding, for seeing beyond surface differences. "We are not defined by our origins," Zara said, her voice carrying the weight of her entire journey. "We are defined by our capacity to grow, to connect, to understand." Jack looked at her, truly looked at her. The tiny princess who had been rejected by her own people was now at the center of a revolution in understanding. Not through force, not through conventional power, but through the simple, profound act of seeing each other's true potential. Outside the medical bay, the horizon continued its journey through the vast cosmic expanse. But inside, something miraculous was happening, a connection that would change everything. The universe, it seemed, had its own way of creating meaning, of finding connection in the most unexpected places. The crystalline spires of Nexus Prime rose before the horizon, unchanged yet somehow diminished. Zara stood on the ship's observation deck, her diminutive frame silhouetted against the familiar landscape of her homeworld, a place that now seemed more like a distant memory than a home. Jack Rodriguez stood beside her, a silent support that spoke volumes about their journey. Diplomatic protocols typically demanded formal announcements, but Zara's return would be anything but typical. The data from their mission, their defense against the Voidweavers, the groundbreaking neural interface technologies, the comprehensive research on interspecies collaboration, preceded her arrival like a cosmic herald. The royal court assembled with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. High monarchs Kale and Lyra waited on the primary reception platform, their towering frames a stark contrast to the memory of their once rejected daughter. As the Horizon's diplomatic shuttle approached, communication channels crackled with unprecedented data streams, scientific discoveries, defensive technologies, and a comprehensive analysis of the Voidweaver threat, all developed through a collaborative effort that centered on Zora's unique capabilities. "We are no longer just observing," Zora explained to Jack during their final approach. "We are demonstrating." The landing was precise. Where previous diplomatic arrivals would have been accompanied by elaborate ceremonies, Zora's return was marked by something far more profound, a scientific and strategic significance that demanded attention. Dr. Elena Chen's research documentation became the primary brief. The neural interface technologies developed during their mission represented a quantum leap in interspecies communication and defensive strategies. What the luminescent court had once seen as a genetic liability was now revealed as their most significant evolutionary advantage. High Monarch Kale stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow that once would have intimidated Zora. Now she stood without fear, her worth defined not by physical size, but by her extraordinary achievements. "Princess Zora," he began, his traditional royal cadence challenged by the weight of scientific documentation, "you have brought more honor to our people than any traditional diplomatic mission could have achieved." The royal court watched in stunned silence as holographic displays, revealed the full extent of Zora's contributions: the defense against the Void Weavers, the breakthrough neural interface technologies, the comprehensive research that positioned the luminescent as a critical player in galactic scientific development. Zora's bioluminescent scales shifted in complex patterns, a communication far more nuanced than verbal language. Acceptance, transformation, a quiet triumph that needed no dramatic declaration. Jack stood slightly behind her, a silent testament to their collaborative journey. The human who had become more than a colleague, a partner in the truest sense of the word. Size was never the limitation. Zora addressed the court, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had redefined the very concept of potential. Perspective was the only true constraint. The diplomatic reception transformed into something unprecedented. Scientific teams from across the luminescent civilization surrounded Zora, eager to understand the technology she had helped develop. Where once she would have been marginalized, she was now the center of attention, not because of royal lineage, but because of her extraordinary capabilities. Dr. Elena Chen's research documentation became a turning point for luminescent society. The neural interface technologies suggested that genetic diversity was not a weakness, but the most critical strength of any evolving civilization. "We have been looking at potential through the wrong lens," one of the royal scientific advisors noted, reviewing the comprehensive data. "Adaptation is our true measure of success." Jack watched with a mixture of pride and understanding. Their journey had been about more than scientific discovery. It had been about challenging fundamental assumptions about worth, potential, and connection. As the diplomatic reception continued, Zora turned to Jack, a moment of silent communication that spoke more than any formal declaration could express. They had not just survived the Void Weaver threat, they had transformed understanding itself. The universe, it seemed, had its own way of writing stories, of proving that true potential knew no boundaries of size, species, or origin. Zora was no longer the rejected princess. She was a beacon of possibility, a living testament to the power of seeing beyond surface limitations. And her journey was just beginning.